Question 1. Benchmark analysis indicates that Furat University entrance exam regulations strictly define the assessment criteria and procedures for all applicants. In a scenario where an applicant demonstrates exceptional prior academic achievement from a different educational system, which of the following actions best aligns with the Furat University entrance exam's regulatory framework? Option A. Evaluating the applicant solely based on the established Furat University entrance exam criteria and procedures, regardless of their prior academic achievements. Option B. Incorporating a supplementary assessment designed by the invigilator to gauge the applicant's potential beyond the standard entrance exam. Option C. Giving significant weight to the applicant's previous academic records from their former educational system, even if they are not directly comparable to the Furat University curriculum. Option D. Allowing the applicant to bypass certain sections of the entrance exam based on their perceived superior prior academic performance. The correct answer is A. Evaluating the applicant solely based on the established Furat University entrance exam criteria and procedures, regardless of their prior academic achievements. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the fundamental principles governing university entrance examinations within the specific regulatory framework of Furat University. The challenge lies in discerning the correct application of these principles when faced with a situation that could potentially compromise the integrity of the examination process. Careful judgment is required to ensure adherence to established guidelines and to uphold the fairness and validity of the entrance exam. The correct approach involves prioritizing the established examination regulations and guidelines of Furat University. This means ensuring that all applicants are assessed based on the criteria and procedures explicitly outlined by the university for its entrance examinations. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the regulatory framework of Furat University, which mandates standardized and equitable assessment for all prospective students. Adhering to these specific regulations ensures that the examination process is fair, transparent, and legally compliant within the university's jurisdiction. An incorrect approach that involves introducing external, non-university approved assessment methods would be professionally unacceptable. This fails to comply with the Furat University entrance exam regulations, which are the sole governing framework for this assessment. Such an approach could lead to an unfair advantage or disadvantage for certain applicants, thereby undermining the validity of the examination and potentially violating the university's commitment to equal opportunity. Another incorrect approach that focuses on anecdotal evidence or personal opinions about an applicant's potential, rather than adhering to the prescribed examination criteria, is also professionally unacceptable. This deviates from the objective and standardized assessment required by the Furat University entrance exam regulations. It introduces subjectivity and bias, compromising the integrity and fairness of the evaluation process. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the specific regulatory framework governing the task at hand. In this case, it means thoroughly familiarizing oneself with the Furat University entrance exam regulations. When faced with a decision, one should always refer back to these specific rules and guidelines. If there is any ambiguity, seeking clarification from the appropriate university authorities responsible for the entrance examination is crucial. The decision must always prioritize adherence to the established, jurisdiction-specific regulations to ensure fairness, integrity, and compliance. Question 2. Research into the Furat University entrance exam's regulatory framework reveals a strict mandate for adherence to its specific laws and guidelines. Which of the following approaches best exemplifies compliance with this mandate? Option A. Prioritizing the use of only the regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines explicitly specified for the Furat University entrance exam. Option B. Applying general principles of educational assessment that are widely accepted internationally, without specific reference to the Furat University's regulations. Option C. Incorporating relevant legal precedents from neighboring countries to provide a broader context for exam question development. Option D. Developing questions that draw upon a combination of Furat University's guidelines and the examination standards of other regional universities. Correct answer is A. Prioritizing the use of only the regulatory framework, laws and guidelines explicitly specified for the Al Furat University entrance exam. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the critical need to adhere strictly to the Al Furat University entrance exam's specific regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines. Misinterpreting or deviating from these established rules can lead to invalidation of the examination process, compromising the integrity of admissions, and potentially leading to disciplinary actions against those involved. Careful judgment is required to ensure all actions align precisely with the defined jurisdiction. The correct approach involves meticulously reviewing and applying only the regulations, laws, and guidelines explicitly stipulated for the Al Furat University entrance exam. This ensures that all aspects of the examination, from question design to administration, are compliant with the governing framework. The regulatory justification lies in the absolute priority requirement of the exam, which mandates strict adherence to its specified jurisdiction. Ethically, this approach upholds fairness and transparency for all candidates by ensuring a standardized and legally sound examination process. An incorrect approach that mixes or references regulations from other countries or jurisdictions is professionally unacceptable. This violates the core principle of strict jurisdiction compliance, as it introduces external standards that are not applicable to the Al Furat University entrance exam. Such a failure undermines the authority of the exam's governing body and creates an uneven playing field for candidates. Another incorrect approach is using generic regulatory terms when a specific jurisdiction, Al Furat University entrance exam, is mentioned. This demonstrates a lack of attention to detail and a failure to engage with the precise requirements of the exam's regulatory framework. It suggests a superficial understanding of compliance obligations and can lead to misapplication of rules, even if the intent is to be compliant. A further incorrect approach is combining multiple jurisdictions in a single question or response. This directly contravenes the explicit instruction to adhere only to the specified jurisdiction. It indicates a fundamental misunderstanding of the exam's compliance requirements and can lead to confusion and errors in judgment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. 1. Identify the governing jurisdiction and its specific regulations. 2. Thoroughly review all applicable laws, guidelines, and regulatory frameworks for that jurisdiction. 3. Cross-reference all actions and decisions against these specific requirements. 4. Seek clarification from the relevant authorities if any ambiguity exists regarding the interpretation or application of the rules. 5. Prioritize adherence to the specified jurisdiction above all other considerations. Question 3. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential instance of plagiarism in the submitted work of an applicant for the Al Furat University entrance exam. The applicant has a previously strong academic record from their secondary education. What is the most appropriate course of action according to Al Furat University's regulatory framework for academic integrity? Option A. Proceed with the formal investigation process as outlined in the university's academic integrity policy, including notifying the applicant and allowing them to respond. Option B. Conduct informal discussions with senior faculty members to determine the severity of the alleged plagiarism before taking any official action. Option C. Dismiss the allegation due to the applicant's otherwise strong academic record, assuming it was an isolated incident. Option D. Immediately disqualify the applicant based on the suspicion of plagiarism. The correct answer is D. Immediately disqualify the applicant based on the suspicion of plagiarism. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires the applicant to navigate the specific regulatory framework of Al Furat University's entrance examination process, particularly concerning the handling of potential academic misconduct. The challenge lies in applying the university's established procedures for addressing allegations of plagiarism, ensuring fairness to the applicant, while upholding the integrity of the examination. Careful judgment is required to balance the need for thorough investigation with the applicant's right to a fair process. The correct approach involves initiating the formal investigation process as outlined by Al Furat University's academic integrity policy. This approach is professionally sound because it directly adheres to the established regulatory framework for handling academic misconduct. By following the prescribed steps, such as notifying the applicant of the allegations and providing an opportunity for a response, the university demonstrates its commitment to due process and fairness, as mandated by its own internal regulations. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are based on evidence and established procedures, minimizing the risk of arbitrary judgment. An incorrect approach would be to immediately disqualify the applicant without a formal investigation. This fails to comply with the university's internal regulations, which typically require a thorough review process before any disciplinary action is taken. Such an action could be seen as a violation of the applicant's rights and could lead to appeals or reputational damage for the university. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the allegation due to the applicant's strong academic record. While a strong record is positive, it does not exempt an applicant from the rules of academic integrity. The university's regulations apply to all applicants, regardless of their past performance. Ignoring potential misconduct based on prior achievements undermines the principle of equal application of rules and compromises the integrity of the examination process. A further incorrect approach would be to consult with other faculty members informally to gauge their opinion before initiating any formal steps. While seeking advice can be helpful, relying solely on informal consultations bypasses the established procedural safeguards designed to ensure a fair and documented investigation. This informal method lacks the rigor and transparency required by university regulations and could lead to biased outcomes. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the relevant university policies and procedures. When an allegation of academic misconduct arises, the first step is always to consult the official policy. This policy will dictate the required steps, including notification, evidence gathering, applicant response, and decision-making. Professionals must then meticulously follow these steps, ensuring that all actions are documented and that the applicant is afforded their procedural rights. The focus should always be on applying the established rules fairly and consistently to maintain the integrity of the academic process. Question 4. Comparative studies suggest that the integrity of university entrance examinations is paramount for equitable admissions. In the context of the Furat University entrance exam, which strictly prohibits the use of any unauthorized external resources during the examination period, a student has prepared detailed study notes covering the syllabus. During the exam, the student discreetly refers to these notes to recall specific historical dates and scientific formulas, believing this aids their performance without directly copying answers. Which of the following actions best aligns with the regulatory framework of the Furat University entrance exam? Option A. The student's action is permissible because referring to notes for factual recall is a common study technique and not considered cheating. Option B. The student's action is permissible as long as the notes were self-prepared and not shared with other students. Option C. The student's action of referring to self-prepared notes, even if not directly copied, is a violation of the prohibition against unauthorized external resources. Option D. The student's action is permissible as long as the student does not copy verbatim from the notes. The correct answer is C. The student's action of referring to self-prepared notes, even if not directly copied, is a violation of the prohibition against unauthorized external resources. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to present their best work and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The Furat University entrance exam regulations are designed to ensure a level playing field and prevent any form of academic misconduct. Navigating this requires a deep understanding of these regulations and a commitment to upholding them, even when faced with pressure or perceived advantage. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the Furat University entrance exam's guidelines regarding the use of external resources and the definition of original work. This means acknowledging that any assistance or information obtained beyond what is explicitly permitted by the exam instructions constitutes a violation. The regulatory framework for the Furat University entrance exam mandates that all submitted work must be the student's own, without unauthorized external aid. This principle is fundamental to ensuring the validity and fairness of the entrance examination process. An incorrect approach would be to interpret the exam's instructions loosely, or to assume that certain forms of external assistance are implicitly allowed. For instance, relying on pre-prepared notes or summaries that were not part of the approved examination materials, even if they were created by the student themselves, would violate the spirit and letter of the regulations. Another incorrect approach would be to seek clarification or assistance from individuals outside the designated proctors or invigilators during the exam, as this constitutes unauthorized communication and support. These actions undermine the integrity of the assessment and are explicitly prohibited by the Furat University entrance exam's academic honesty policies. Professionals in an examination setting should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established rules and ethical conduct. This involves 1. Clearly understanding the specific regulations governing the situation. 2. Assessing any potential actions against these regulations. 3. Erring on the side of caution when ambiguity exists. And 4. Prioritizing academic integrity and fairness above all else. When in doubt, seeking clarification from authorized personnel before acting is a crucial step in maintaining compliance. Question 5. Compliance review shows that the admissions committee for the Furat University entrance exam is considering accepting applications with slightly incomplete documentation for a few prospective students to help meet the university's enrollment targets for the upcoming academic year. The committee is debating whether to prioritize meeting these targets by making minor allowances for documentation. Option A. Strictly adhere to the Furat University entrance exam's regulatory framework regarding all required documentation and eligibility criteria, and only accept applications that fully meet these standards, seeking waivers or extensions only through officially sanctioned procedures. Option B. Focus on candidates who have already submitted complete documentation, even if this means falling short of the enrollment targets, and then explore alternative recruitment strategies for future cycles. Option C. Prioritize meeting enrollment targets by accepting applications with minor documentation deficiencies, assuming these candidates are otherwise qualified and will submit the missing items shortly after admission. Option D. Allow the admissions committee to use their discretion to waive certain documentation requirements for candidates who appear to have strong academic potential, even if they do not fully meet the stated criteria. The correct answer is A. Strictly adhere to the Furat University entrance exam's regulatory framework regarding all required documentation and eligibility criteria, and only accept applications that fully meet these standards, seeking waivers or extensions only through officially sanctioned procedures. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential conflict between a university's internal policies and the overarching regulatory framework governing academic admissions. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can create an environment where shortcuts or misinterpretations of regulations might seem appealing, but strict adherence to the Furat University entrance exam's regulatory framework is paramount. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that all admission decisions are made fairly, transparently, and in accordance with the established rules, safeguarding the integrity of the examination process and the university's reputation. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding and strict application of the Furat University entrance exam's specific regulatory framework regarding eligibility criteria and documentation. This means verifying that all submitted documents meet the defined standards and that candidates satisfy all stated prerequisites for admission. This approach is ethically sound and regulatorily compliant because it upholds the principles of fairness and equal opportunity for all applicants, ensuring that admission is based on merit and adherence to established rules, as mandated by the exam's governing regulations. An incorrect approach that involves accepting incomplete documentation without proper justification or waiver, based solely on the desire to meet enrollment targets, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses the established procedures and potentially grants an unfair advantage to candidates who have not met the required standards, undermining the integrity of the admission process. Another incorrect approach, which is to prioritize candidates based on factors not explicitly defined in the Furat University entrance exam's regulatory framework, such as personal connections or perceived future potential without objective assessment, is also a failure. This introduces bias and deviates from the objective criteria set forth by the regulations, leading to discriminatory practices and a breach of trust. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the Furat University entrance exam's specific regulatory framework. This involves consulting the official guidelines, seeking clarification from the relevant regulatory bodies, if ambiguities exist, and prioritizing adherence to these rules above all else. When faced with pressure or difficult decisions, professionals must document their reasoning, maintain objectivity, and always act in a manner that upholds the integrity and fairness of the examination and admission process, as dictated by the governing regulations. Question 6. Regulatory review indicates that a prospective student preparing for the Furat University entrance exam has encountered a section with complex terminology they are unsure about. The student is concerned about misinterpreting the questions and wants to ensure their answers are accurate and reflect their true understanding. Which of the following actions best aligns with the Furat University entrance exam regulations and ethical academic practices? Option A. The student asks a friend who has previously taken the exam for their interpretation of similar terms and how they approached such questions. Option B. The student independently researches the terminology using university-approved study guides and seeks clarification on any remaining ambiguities from the official exam helpline. Option C. The student discreetly uses a personal digital device to search for definitions and explanations of the complex terminology during the exam preparation period. Option D. The student relies on online forums and unofficial study groups to gather interpretations of the terminology, assuming these sources provide accurate insights. The correct answer is B. The student independently researches the terminology using university-approved study guides and seeks clarification on any remaining ambiguities from the official exam helpline. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to present their best work and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to succeed in a crucial entrance exam necessitates careful judgment to ensure that all actions align with established ethical and regulatory standards. The correct approach involves a student independently completing all assigned tasks and seeking clarification on any ambiguities directly from the exam administrators or official university resources. This upholds the principle of academic honesty, which is a cornerstone of educational institutions like Furat University. Specifically, it adheres to the Furat University entrance exam regulations that mandate original work and prohibit any form of external assistance or misrepresentation of knowledge. This approach ensures a fair assessment of the student's capabilities, which is the primary objective of an entrance examination. An incorrect approach of seeking assistance from a senior student or a tutor to review and refine answers before submission is a direct violation of the Furat University entrance exam regulations concerning academic integrity. This constitutes unauthorized collaboration and an attempt to gain an unfair advantage, undermining the validity of the examination process. Another incorrect approach of using pre-prepared notes or study materials that were not explicitly permitted for use during the exam is also a breach of the exam's rules. This falls under the category of cheating and misrepresentation, as it implies the student possesses knowledge or has access to information beyond what is permitted, thereby distorting the assessment of their genuine understanding. A further incorrect approach of interpreting ambiguous questions in a way that aligns with information obtained from unofficial sources, rather than seeking official clarification, demonstrates a disregard for the established communication channels and regulatory framework. This can lead to an inaccurate assessment and potentially misrepresent the student's knowledge base, failing to meet the standards of academic rigor expected by Furat University. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established rules and ethical guidelines. This involves understanding the specific regulations governing the situation, identifying potential conflicts of interest or ethical dilemmas, and choosing the course of action that most closely aligns with the principles of fairness, honesty, and integrity. When in doubt, seeking clarification from the appropriate authorities is always the most prudent and professionally responsible step. Question 7. Consider a scenario where during the Furat University entrance exam, an invigilator observes a candidate discreetly consulting a small, folded piece of paper concealed within their sleeve. The paper appears to contain handwritten notes. According to the Furat University entrance exam's regulatory framework, what is the most appropriate immediate action for the invigilator to take? Option A. Discreetly confiscate the paper and instruct the candidate to continue the exam, documenting the incident for later review. Option B. Immediately stop the candidate and escort them out of the examination hall, informing them they are disqualified. Option C. Ignore the observation, assuming the notes are personal reminders and not exam-related, and continue monitoring other candidates. Option D. Discreetly confiscate the paper and inform the candidate that they must cease the exam and leave the hall. The correct answer is A. Discreetly confiscate the paper and instruct the candidate to continue the exam, documenting the incident for later review. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to present their best work and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The pressure to succeed in a competitive entrance exam environment can lead students to seek an unfair advantage, making it crucial for exam administrators to uphold the established rules and guidelines. Careful judgment is required to balance the need for a rigorous evaluation with the ethical imperative to ensure a level playing field for all candidates. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to the Furat University entrance exam regulations regarding the use of external materials during the examination. This means confiscating any unauthorized items and ensuring the integrity of the testing environment. This approach is justified by the Furat University entrance exam's explicit rules, which are designed to prevent academic dishonesty and ensure that all candidates are assessed based on their own knowledge and abilities. Upholding these regulations is a fundamental ethical obligation for exam administrators, safeguarding the credibility of the university's admissions process. An incorrect approach would be to allow the student to continue the exam after noticing the unauthorized notes, perhaps with a warning. This fails to uphold the Furat University entrance exam's regulations, which likely stipulate immediate action upon discovery of cheating. Ethically, this approach compromises the fairness of the exam for other students who followed the rules. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately disqualify the student without any further inquiry or adherence to a defined disciplinary procedure. While the student has clearly violated a rule, the Furat University entrance exam's framework might outline a specific process for handling such violations, which could include a formal warning or a review panel. Failing to follow this procedure could be seen as an arbitrary or overly harsh response, potentially leading to appeals or reputational damage for the university. A third incorrect approach would be to ignore the presence of the notes, assuming they are harmless or that the student is unlikely to use them. This is a failure of due diligence and a direct violation of the exam administrator's responsibility to monitor the testing environment. It undermines the entire purpose of the exam regulations and creates an environment where cheating is implicitly tolerated. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the Furat University entrance exam's specific regulations. When a potential violation is observed, the administrator should 1. Immediately and discreetly assess the situation to confirm the violation. 2. Follow the prescribed protocol for handling such violations as outlined in the Furat University entrance exam guidelines, which typically involves confiscation of unauthorized materials and documentation of the incident. 3. Report the incident to the appropriate university authority for further action, as per the exam's procedural rules. This systematic approach ensures fairness, consistency, and adherence to the established academic integrity standards of Furat University. Question 8. The performance metrics show a significant increase in applications for the Furat University's engineering programs, exceeding the expected enrollment targets. The admissions committee is under pressure to select a cohort that meets these targets while upholding academic standards. Which of the following actions best aligns with the regulatory framework and guidelines for Furat University's entrance examinations and admissions process? Option A. Focus on admitting a diverse student body by selecting candidates from various geographical regions and socioeconomic backgrounds, even if some of these candidates do not fully meet the minimum academic thresholds outlined in the university's policy. Option B. Expedite the review process by prioritizing applicants who have been informally recommended by faculty members or alumni, regardless of their full adherence to all stated admission requirements. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive review of all applications, strictly adhering to the established academic criteria and scoring rubrics as defined in the Furat University's official admissions policy, and prioritize candidates who meet these objective benchmarks. Option D. Select a predetermined number of top-scoring applicants from the overall pool, and then adjust the admission standards downwards for the remaining slots to meet the enrollment target. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive review of all applications, strictly adhering to the established academic criteria and scoring rubrics as defined in the Furat University's official admissions policy, and prioritize candidates who meet these objective benchmarks. Explanation: the performance metrics show a significant increase in student applications for the Furat University's engineering programs. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the admissions committee to balance the university's strategic goals of increasing enrollment with its commitment to maintaining academic standards and ensuring a fair admissions process for all applicants. The pressure to meet enrollment targets could tempt individuals to overlook established criteria or engage in preferential treatment, which would violate regulatory compliance and ethical principles. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of all applications against the established admission criteria, as outlined in the Furat University's official admissions policy and guidelines. This policy, which is the sole governing document for this exam's jurisdiction, mandates that all applicants be evaluated based on academic merit, standardized test scores, if applicable, and any other objective criteria specified. Adherence to this policy ensures fairness, transparency, and equal opportunity, thereby complying with the university's regulatory framework for admissions. It upholds the integrity of the admissions process and prevents any perception of bias or favoritism. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize applicants based on informal recommendations or perceived potential without a systematic evaluation against the stated criteria. This deviates from the Furat University's admissions policy, which does not recognize informal channels for admission preference. Such an approach risks admitting students who may not meet the academic rigor of the programs, potentially impacting the university's reputation and the quality of its graduates. It also creates an unfair playing field for other applicants who followed the prescribed application process. Another incorrect approach would be to relax the admission standards for a specific group of applicants to meet enrollment targets quickly. This directly contravenes the Furat University's commitment to academic excellence as stipulated in its admissions guidelines. Lowering standards without a formal review and approval process, as dictated by the university's internal regulations, undermines the credibility of the degrees awarded and could lead to future academic difficulties for the admitted students. Third incorrect approach would be to favor applicants from certain regions or backgrounds solely to achieve diversity targets, without a clear mandate or established procedure within the Furat University's admissions policy for such considerations. While diversity can be a valuable aspect of a university community, any such initiatives must be formally incorporated into the admissions framework and applied consistently and transparently to all applicants. Deviating from the established policy for ad hoc diversity goals can lead to accusations of discrimination and violate the principle of merit-based admissions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a clear understanding and strict adherence to the Furat University's official admissions policy and all relevant internal guidelines. Any proposed changes or exceptions to these policies must be formally debated, approved, and documented by the appropriate university authorities before implementation. In situations of increased application volume, the focus should remain on efficient and equitable application of existing, objective criteria. If the existing criteria are deemed insufficient to meet strategic goals or address emerging needs, the proper procedure is to initiate a formal review and revision of the policy itself, rather than making ad hoc decisions that bypass established regulations. Question 9. The investigation demonstrates that a fellow applicant during the Furat University entrance exam was observed discreetly receiving answers from another applicant. As a student taking the exam, what is the most appropriate immediate action to uphold the integrity of the examination process? Option A. Directly confront the applicant who is cheating to stop their actions. Option B. Attempt to subtly signal to the cheating applicant to cease their behavior. Option C. Discreetly inform the examination proctor or the designated university official responsible for exam supervision. Option D. Ignore the observed cheating to avoid potential conflict or repercussions. The correct answer is C. Discreetly inform the examination proctor or the designated university official responsible for exam supervision. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to excel and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to perform well in a high-stakes entrance exam, coupled with the availability of unauthorized assistance, creates a tempting pathway for academic dishonesty. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation ethically and in accordance with Furat University's specific regulations. The correct approach involves immediately reporting the observed incident to the appropriate university authority, such as the examination proctor or the designated academic integrity office. This upholds the principle of fairness and ensures that all candidates are assessed on their own merit. Furat University's regulatory framework, as implied by the entrance exam context, would undoubtedly prioritize academic honesty and establish clear procedures for addressing violations. Reporting the incident aligns with the ethical obligation to maintain the integrity of the examination process and prevent unfair advantages. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the observed cheating. Failure to act condones academic dishonesty and undermines the fairness of the examination for all other students. It also violates the implicit trust placed in students to uphold the university's standards. Another incorrect approach would be to confront the student directly during the exam. This could lead to disruption, escalation, and potentially compromise the integrity of the examination further, as well as place the observer in a potentially confrontational situation without proper authority. Furthermore, attempting to discreetly help the cheating student would be a severe ethical breach, directly participating in academic misconduct and violating the trust of the university. Professionals in such situations should follow a clear decision-making framework. 1. Identify the potential violation of academic integrity. 2. Consult the relevant university regulations and guidelines for reporting procedures. 3. Report the incident promptly and accurately to the designated authority, providing factual observations. 4. Avoid direct intervention unless explicitly authorized by university policy to prevent further disruption or compromise. Question 10. The analysis reveals that a prospective student preparing for the Furat University entrance exam has gathered several academic transcripts from previous institutions. However, the university's official examination guidelines clearly state that only original, officially stamped transcripts are acceptable for submission, and that photocopies or unverified digital copies will be rejected. The student is considering submitting a high-quality scanned copy of their most recent transcript, believing it to be a more convenient method of submission. Based on the Furat University entrance exam's regulatory framework, what is the most appropriate course of action for the student? Option A. Obtain an officially stamped original transcript from the previous institution and submit it according to the university's specified format and deadline. Option B. Submit the high-quality scanned copy of the transcript, as it is a clear and accurate representation of the original document. Option C. Contact the Furat University admissions office to inquire about the possibility of submitting a scanned copy, explaining the convenience. Option D. Submit the scanned copy along with a written explanation of why an original transcript is not immediately available. The correct answer is B. Submit the high-quality scanned copy of the transcript, as it is a clear and accurate representation of the original document. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge for a prospective student applying to Furat University, requiring them to navigate the university's specific entrance examination regulations. The core difficulty lies in accurately interpreting and applying the stipulated academic integrity rules to their own application process, particularly concerning the submission of supporting documents. A deep understanding of these regulations is crucial to avoid any missteps that could lead to disqualification. The correct approach involves meticulously reviewing the Furat University entrance exam's official guidelines regarding document submission and academic honesty. This includes understanding what constitutes acceptable supporting evidence, the required format, and the deadlines. Adhering strictly to these guidelines, ensuring all submitted documents are authentic and accurately reflect the applicant's academic record, and seeking clarification from the university admissions office if any aspect of the regulations is unclear, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the university's commitment to fairness and academic integrity, ensuring a level playing field for all candidates. An incorrect approach would be to assume that common practices for university applications in other contexts are applicable here. For instance, submitting documents that are not in the specified format or are incomplete without verifying Furat University-specific requirements demonstrates a failure to comply with the explicit regulations. Another incorrect approach is to rely on informal advice from peers or unverified online sources rather than consulting the official Furat University entrance exam documentation. This bypasses the established regulatory framework and introduces a high risk of error. A further failure would be to submit documents that are not entirely truthful or are misleading, even if the applicant believes they are presenting themselves in the best possible light. This directly violates the principle of academic honesty mandated by the examination rules. Professionals in similar situations should adopt a systematic decision-making process. This begins with identifying the specific regulatory framework governing the situation in this case, the Furat University entrance exam regulations. Next, they must thoroughly read and understand all relevant rules and guidelines. If any ambiguity exists, the next step is to proactively seek clarification from the authoritative source, which is the university admissions department. Finally, all actions taken must be demonstrably in compliance with the identified regulations. Question 11. Operational review demonstrates a potential pattern of irregularities in the admissions process for the upcoming academic year, with concerns raised about the admission of several candidates who may not have met the standard academic criteria. The university is facing significant financial pressure to meet enrollment targets for the current fiscal period. Which of the following actions best upholds regulatory compliance and ethical standards? Option A. Conduct a limited review, focusing only on cases that might directly impact immediate funding, while deferring a broader investigation to a later date. Option B. Dismiss the allegations as unsubstantiated without further inquiry, given the university's urgent need to meet enrollment targets and secure funding. Option C. Immediately initiate a formal, impartial investigation into the alleged irregularities, adhering to Furat University's admissions policies and any applicable Ministry of Higher Education guidelines, to determine the validity of the concerns and take appropriate action. Option D. Instruct the admissions committee to expedite the review process and overlook minor discrepancies to ensure enrollment targets are met promptly. The correct answer is C. Immediately initiate a formal, impartial investigation into the alleged irregularities, adhering to Furat University's admissions policies and any applicable Ministry of Higher Education guidelines, to determine the validity of the concerns and take appropriate action. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate need for funding and the ethical obligation to ensure the integrity of the admissions process. The pressure to meet financial targets can tempt individuals to overlook or downplay irregularities, creating a significant risk of regulatory noncompliance and reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to balance institutional goals with adherence to established academic and ethical standards. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial investigation of the alleged irregularities, adhering strictly to Furat University's established admissions policies and any relevant Ministry of Higher Education guidelines. This approach prioritizes transparency, fairness, and the integrity of the academic process. By initiating a formal inquiry, the university demonstrates its commitment to upholding its own standards and regulatory requirements, ensuring that admissions are based on merit and not on undue influence or fraudulent means. This aligns with the ethical imperative to maintain a fair and equitable educational environment and the regulatory expectation that universities operate with integrity. An incorrect approach of immediately dismissing the allegations without investigation fails to uphold the university's responsibility to ensure fair admissions. This could lead to the admission of unqualified candidates, undermining the academic standards of the university and potentially violating ministry regulations regarding admissions criteria. Another incorrect approach of selectively investigating only those allegations that directly impact immediate funding targets is ethically compromised and demonstrates a clear disregard for due process and fairness. This selective approach risks overlooking significant breaches of integrity and could lead to accusations of bias and favorability, further damaging the university's reputation and potentially incurring penalties from regulatory bodies. Finally, an approach that involves pressuring the admissions committee to overlook minor discrepancies to expedite the process is a direct violation of ethical principles and regulatory compliance. This constitutes an attempt to manipulate the admissions process for financial gain, which is a serious breach of trust and academic integrity. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that begins with acknowledging the reported concern. This should be followed by a commitment to a fair and objective investigation, guided by established university policies and relevant external regulations. The process should involve gathering all relevant evidence, interviewing involved parties, and ensuring confidentiality where appropriate. Decisions should be based on the findings of the investigation and communicated transparently, adhering to established protocols. If the investigation reveals breaches, appropriate corrective actions must be taken, regardless of their impact on immediate financial goals. Question 12. To address the challenge of ensuring fair and compliant admissions for the Furat University entrance exam, a candidate's application is flagged due to inconsistencies in their submitted academic transcripts. The admissions officer must decide how to proceed. Which of the following actions best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical principles governing university entrance examinations? Option A. Admit the candidate provisionally, allowing them to submit corrected transcripts within the first semester of their enrollment. Option B. Verify the authenticity of the submitted academic records and ensure all prerequisite conditions outlined in the Furat University entrance exam regulations are met before proceeding with the evaluation. Option C. Accept the candidate based on their strong performance in a recent interview, assuming the transcript inconsistencies are minor and can be resolved later. Option D. Request a letter of recommendation from the candidate's former school that speaks to their potential, and use this to override the transcript discrepancies. The correct answer is B. Verify the authenticity of the submitted academic records and ensure all prerequisite conditions outlined in the Furat University entrance exam regulations are met before proceeding with the evaluation. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in academic institutions, ensuring the integrity of the admissions process while adhering to established regulations and ethical standards. The challenge lies in balancing the need to evaluate candidates fairly based on merit and adherence to university policies, with the potential for external pressures or personal biases to influence decisions. Careful judgment is required to uphold the university's reputation and the fairness of its entrance examinations. The correct approach involves a thorough review of all submitted documentation against the Furat University entrance exam regulations, specifically focusing on verifying the authenticity of academic records and ensuring all prerequisite conditions for admission are met. This approach is ethically sound and regulatorily compliant because it prioritizes objective criteria and established procedures, thereby safeguarding the fairness and credibility of the admissions process. It aligns with the principles of transparency and accountability expected of an academic institution. An incorrect approach that involves overlooking discrepancies in academic records due to a candidate's perceived potential or connections would be a direct violation of the Furat University entrance exam regulations. Such an action undermines the meritocratic basis of admissions and could lead to the admission of unqualified candidates, thereby compromising the academic standards of the university. It also introduces an element of bias and unfairness, which are ethically unacceptable in academic admissions. Another incorrect approach, such as accepting a candidate based on a verbal assurance of future academic performance without verifying current qualifications, fails to adhere to the documented requirements of the entrance exam. This bypasses the established regulatory framework designed to ensure that all admitted students meet the necessary academic thresholds. It is professionally unsound, as it relies on subjective promises rather than concrete evidence, creating a precedent for laxity in admission standards. A further incorrect approach, which might involve prioritizing candidates who have participated in extracurricular activities over those who meet the core academic requirements, also deviates from the regulatory framework. While extracurriculars can be a positive factor, the Furat University entrance exam regulations likely stipulate specific academic criteria as the primary basis for admission. Deviating from these core requirements without explicit regulatory allowance would be a breach of compliance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic review of all applications against the explicit criteria outlined in the Furat University Entrance Exam Regulations. When discrepancies or ambiguities arise, the professional should consult the relevant university policies and seek clarification from the admissions committee or designated authorities. The decision should always be grounded in objective evidence and adherence to the established regulatory framework, ensuring fairness, transparency, and the integrity of the admissions process. Question 13. The review process indicates that a candidate for the Furat University Entrance Exam has submitted a research paper that was also a significant component of their coursework at a previous institution. The candidate has not explicitly mentioned this prior submission or provided details on the extent of original contribution in this specific application. Which of the following actions best reflects adherence to the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for the Furat University Entrance Exam? Option A. The candidate should immediately contact the Furat University Admissions Office to clarify the situation, providing full details of the previous submission and seeking guidance on how to properly present the work in their current application, ensuring all original contributions are clearly delineated. Option B. The candidate should proceed with the application as is, assuming that the admissions committee will recognize the paper as a previous submission and will not penalize them for it. Option C. The candidate should assume that submitting the paper again is acceptable as long as it represents their best work, and no specific instruction prohibited resubmission of prior academic work. Option D. The candidate should remove the paper from their application and submit only newly generated work to avoid any potential issues, even if it means submitting less comprehensive evidence of their academic capabilities. The correct answer is A. The candidate should immediately contact the Furat University Admissions Office to clarify the situation, providing full details of the previous submission and seeking guidance on how to properly present the work in their current application, ensuring all original contributions are clearly delineated. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires navigating potential conflicts between academic integrity, university policy, and the ethical obligations of an applicant. The applicant must demonstrate an understanding of the Furat University's specific entrance examination regulations, particularly concerning the submission of prior academic work and the prohibition of plagiarism or misrepresentation. The core challenge lies in accurately presenting one's qualifications without violating these rules. The correct approach involves a truthful and transparent disclosure of all academic achievements, including any work that may have been submitted elsewhere, while strictly adhering to the Furat University's guidelines on originality and citation. This approach upholds the principles of academic honesty, which are fundamental to the integrity of the university's admissions process. Specifically, it aligns with the implied regulatory framework of any reputable educational institution that values genuine merit and penalizes academic dishonesty. By acknowledging prior work and citing it appropriately, the applicant demonstrates respect for intellectual property and the university's standards. An incorrect approach of submitting work previously graded by another institution without proper attribution or disclosure would constitute a violation of academic integrity. This misrepresents the applicant's original contribution and attempts to gain an unfair advantage, which is ethically reprehensible and likely against the spirit, if not the letter, of Furat University's entrance exam regulations. Another incorrect approach, that of omitting any mention of prior academic work that might be relevant, could be seen as an attempt to mislead the admissions committee about the applicant's full academic history, potentially violating disclosure requirements. Finally, fabricating or exaggerating academic achievements would be a direct breach of ethical conduct and university regulations, leading to immediate disqualification and potential future repercussions. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes honesty, transparency, and adherence to established rules. This involves carefully reading and understanding all application instructions and university policies, seeking clarification if any aspect is unclear, and ensuring that all submitted materials are accurate and properly attributed. The guiding principle should be to present oneself truthfully and ethically, allowing the admissions committee to make an informed decision based on genuine qualifications. Question 14. What factors determine the validity and completeness of an international applicant's documentation for the Furat University entrance examination, according to its specific regulatory framework? Option A. The submission of a broad range of personal documents that the applicant believes might support their application, even if not explicitly requested. Option B. The applicant's prior academic achievements in their home country, irrespective of official documentation. Option C. The official recognition and translation of academic transcripts by designated authorities, alongside a valid passport and any other documents explicitly mandated by the Furat University admission prospectus. Option D. The applicant's personal assessment of document relevance and the availability of unofficial translations. The correct answer is D. The applicant's personal assessment of document relevance and the availability of unofficial translations. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the applicant to navigate the complex and often nuanced requirements of the Furat University entrance examination regulations. The challenge lies in accurately interpreting and applying these specific regulations to a given situation, ensuring compliance without overstepping or misinterpreting the established framework. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between adherence to the letter of the law and the spirit of the regulations, especially when dealing with potential ambiguities or edge cases. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of the Furat University's official entrance examination guidelines, specifically focusing on the stipulated documentation requirements for international applicants. This approach is right because it directly addresses the core of the university's regulatory framework for admissions. By prioritizing the submission of officially recognized and translated academic transcripts, along with a valid passport and any other documents explicitly listed in the Furat University's admission prospectus, the applicant demonstrates a commitment to following the prescribed procedures. This aligns with the ethical obligation to be truthful and transparent in the application process and the regulatory requirement to meet all stated admission criteria. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on submitting documents that are readily available without verifying their official recognition or translation status by Furat University would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a lack of due diligence in understanding the specific regulatory requirements, potentially leading to an incomplete or invalid application. Another incorrect approach, which involves attempting to bypass or circumvent the documented procedures by submitting unofficial or unverified documents, is a direct violation of the university's regulations and an ethical breach of honesty. It undermines the integrity of the admission process and demonstrates a disregard for the established legal and administrative framework. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive review of the official Furat University entrance examination regulations and admission guidelines. This should be followed by a meticulous cross-referencing of personal documentation against these requirements. When in doubt, seeking clarification directly from the Furat University Admissions Office is a crucial step. The process emphasizes proactive compliance, accuracy, and adherence to the specific legal and administrative mandates of the institution. Question 15. The monitoring system demonstrates a candidate repeatedly looking at their watch and then making a subtle gesture towards a specific section of the examination paper, which is not a permitted action during the Furat University entrance exam. The invigilator observes this behavior. Which of the following actions best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for this examination? Option A. Approach the candidate directly. Question their actions and confiscate their examination paper on the spot, declaring them disqualified. Option B. Overlook the behavior, assuming it is a minor distraction or a personal habit, and continue monitoring other candidates. Option C. Discreetly note the specific time of the observation, the candidate's actions, and the paper section indicated, and report this to the chief invigilator or examination supervisor immediately after the examination session concludes, following the university's established protocol for reporting irregularities. Option D. Discuss the candidate's behavior with other invigilators and candidates during the examination to seek their opinion on whether it constitutes misconduct. The correct answer is C. Discreetly note the specific time of the observation, the candidate's actions, and the paper section indicated, and report this to the chief invigilator or examination supervisor immediately after the examination session concludes, following the university's established protocol for reporting irregularities. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the applicant to navigate the ethical and regulatory landscape of academic integrity within the context of a university entrance examination. The core challenge lies in identifying and responding appropriately to potential breaches of examination rules, which are designed to ensure fairness and the validity of the assessment process. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between minor procedural deviations and deliberate attempts to gain an unfair advantage, and to act in accordance with the established regulations of Furat University. The correct approach involves meticulously documenting the observed anomaly and reporting it through the designated channels as per Furat University's examination regulations. This upholds the principle of academic integrity by ensuring that any potential misconduct is investigated fairly and systematically. The regulatory justification lies in adhering to the examination board's established procedures for handling suspected irregularities, which are designed to maintain the credibility of the entrance exam and prevent unfair admissions. Ethically, this approach demonstrates a commitment to fairness for all candidates. An incorrect approach of ignoring the observation is ethically and regulatorily unacceptable. It fails to uphold the integrity of the examination process and implicitly condones potential misconduct, thereby undermining the fairness of the admissions. This constitutes a failure to adhere to the university's examination guidelines, which mandate reporting of suspicious activities. Another incorrect approach of directly confronting the candidate and making an immediate judgment about their guilt is also professionally unsound. This bypasses the established procedural safeguards for investigating alleged breaches, potentially leading to an unfair accusation and violating the candidate's right to due process as outlined in university regulations. It also risks escalating the situation unnecessarily and could be seen as overstepping the invigilator's defined role. A further incorrect approach of discussing the observation with other candidates is a severe breach of confidentiality and examination protocol. This not only compromises the integrity of the examination by potentially distracting or influencing other candidates, but also violates the privacy of the individual being observed. It demonstrates a lack of professionalism and disregard for the strict rules governing examination conduct. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the Furat University entrance exam regulations regarding invigilation duties and reporting procedures. When an anomaly is observed, the professional should remain calm, discreetly record the details, and then follow the prescribed reporting mechanism without making premature judgments or engaging in unauthorized actions. The focus should always be on adherence to established rules and ensuring a fair and secure examination environment. Question 16. Operational review demonstrates that an applicant for the Furat University entrance exam has submitted an academic transcript with a minor discrepancy in the grading scale compared to the university's stated requirements. The applicant is concerned about this discrepancy and its potential impact on their application. Which of the following actions should the applicant take to ensure strict compliance with the Furat University entrance exam regulations? Option A. Contact the previous educational institution to request an amendment to the transcript without first verifying the university's procedures. Option B. Directly consult the Furat University entrance exam regulations for guidance on handling discrepancies in submitted academic documents. Option C. Submit a notarized explanation of the discrepancy to the university, assuming this will be accepted as supplementary evidence. Option D. Assume that a standard international practice for transcript verification applies and proceed accordingly. The correct answer is B. Directly consult the Furat University entrance exam regulations for guidance on handling discrepancies in submitted academic documents. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the applicant to navigate the specific regulatory framework of Furat University's entrance examination process, which is paramount. The core of the challenge lies in understanding and applying the university's stated guidelines regarding the submission of academic transcripts, particularly when discrepancies arise. Careful judgment is required to ensure compliance with the university's absolute priority on adhering to its own established procedures, rather than relying on assumptions or external interpretations. The correct approach involves directly consulting the Furat University entrance exam regulations for guidance on handling discrepancies in submitted academic documents. This approach is right because it prioritizes adherence to the specific rules and procedures set forth by the examining body. The Furat University entrance exam guidelines are the sole governing framework for this process. By seeking clarification within these regulations, the applicant demonstrates a commitment to regulatory compliance and an understanding that the university's internal rules are the definitive source of truth for its entrance examination. This proactive step ensures that any action taken is in direct accordance with the established legal and administrative framework of the university. An incorrect approach would be to assume that a standard international practice for transcript verification applies. This is a regulatory failure because it ignores the absolute priority requirement to follow only the Furat University entrance exam regulations. International practices, while potentially sound, are not the governing framework for this specific examination and could lead to non-compliance. Another incorrect approach would be to contact the previous educational institution for an amendment without first verifying if the Furat University entrance exam regulations permit or prescribe such a course of action. This is an ethical and regulatory failure, as it bypasses the university's stipulated process. The university's regulations dictate how such issues must be handled, and unilaterally seeking an amendment without consulting those rules could invalidate the applicant's submission or lead to disqualification. A further incorrect approach would be to submit a notarized explanation of the discrepancy without confirming if this is an acceptable procedure under the Furat University entrance exam guidelines. While notarization adds a layer of authenticity, it is not a substitute for following the university's specific requirements for addressing transcript issues. The university's regulations are the absolute priority, and any deviation from them, even with seemingly legitimate supporting documentation, constitutes a failure to comply. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should always begin with identifying the governing regulatory framework. In this case, it is exclusively the Furat University entrance exam regulations. The next step is to thoroughly review these regulations for any provisions related to the specific issue at hand, such as document discrepancies. If the regulations are unclear, the appropriate action is to seek official clarification directly from the Furat University entrance exam administration, adhering strictly to their communication channels and procedures. This ensures that all actions are compliant and informed by the definitive rules of the examination. Question 17. The assessment process reveals that an applicant for the Furat University entrance exam has brought a comprehensive study guide, purchased legally from a reputable bookstore several weeks prior to the exam, into the examination hall. The applicant claims they are not using it during the exam, but are merely keeping it for reference. Based on the Furat University entrance exam's regulatory framework, what is the most appropriate interpretation of this situation? Option A. The applicant is not in violation as long as they do not share the study guide with other candidates. Option B. The applicant is not in violation as long as they do not actively consult the study guide during the examination. Option C. The applicant is not in violation because the study guide was purchased legally and obtained prior to the examination period. Option D. The applicant is in violation of the examination regulations because the possession of unauthorized study materials within the examination hall, regardless of intent to use, is prohibited. The correct answer is D. The applicant is in violation of the examination regulations because the possession of unauthorized study materials within the examination hall, regardless of intent to use, is prohibited. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the Furat University's specific entrance examination regulations, particularly concerning academic integrity and the appropriate use of external resources. The applicant must navigate the fine line between legitimate preparation and prohibited actions that could compromise the fairness and validity of the examination. Careful judgment is required to identify and adhere to the precise boundaries set by the university's guidelines. The correct approach involves understanding that the Furat University entrance exam regulations strictly prohibit the use of any external materials or assistance during the examination period, including study guides that are not explicitly sanctioned by the university for pre-exam preparation. This approach is right because it directly aligns with the core principle of academic integrity, which is fundamental to any educational institution. The university's regulations are designed to ensure a level playing field for all candidates and to accurately assess individual knowledge and abilities. Relying on unauthorized study guides, even if obtained prior to the exam, could be interpreted as an attempt to gain an unfair advantage or to circumvent the intended assessment of the applicant's own learning. This adheres to the spirit and letter of regulations aimed at preventing academic misconduct. An incorrect approach would be to assume that any study material obtained before the exam is permissible for review during the examination period. This fails to recognize that the prohibition often extends to the possession of such materials during the exam itself, regardless of when they were acquired. This approach violates the principle of academic integrity by potentially allowing for the introduction of external information that could influence responses, thereby undermining the exam's validity. Another incorrect approach would be to interpret the regulations as only prohibiting direct copying or collaboration during the exam. This overlooks the broader intent of such regulations, which is to ensure that the assessment reflects the applicant's independent knowledge and understanding, not their ability to access or recall information from external sources. This approach is ethically flawed as it seeks to exploit loopholes rather than uphold the spirit of fair assessment. A further incorrect approach would be to believe that if the study guide was purchased legally, its use during the exam is automatically permitted. This ignores the fact that legality of acquisition does not equate to permissibility of use within the specific context of an examination governed by its own set of rules. The university's regulations are paramount in defining what constitutes acceptable conduct during the exam. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a thorough review of the specific examination's rules and regulations. Applicants should err on the side of caution and assume that any material not explicitly provided or permitted by the examination authority is prohibited. When in doubt, seeking clarification from the examination administrators is the most responsible course of action. The focus should always be on demonstrating one's own knowledge and understanding without any form of external aid that could compromise the integrity of the assessment. Question 18. Operational review demonstrates a potential discrepancy in the handling of examination materials for a specific candidate during the Furat University entrance exam, specifically noting an unusual delay in the return of a supplementary answer sheet. Option A. Immediately inform other candidates about the observed discrepancy to ensure transparency. Option B. Publicly announce the candidate's name and the nature of the discrepancy to all present at the examination center. Option C. Overlook the observation, assuming it was a minor administrative oversight with no impact on the examination's integrity. Option D. Initiate a formal inquiry with the examination proctor and relevant university examination committee to investigate the discrepancy according to established university protocols. Correct answer is D. Initiate a formal inquiry with the examination proctor and relevant university examination committee to investigate the discrepancy according to established university protocols. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the applicant to navigate the specific regulatory framework of Furat University's entrance examination, which likely emphasizes academic integrity and adherence to established examination procedures. The challenge lies in identifying the most appropriate action when an operational review reveals a potential procedural deviation that could impact the fairness and validity of the examination process. Careful judgment is required to balance the need for thoroughness with the potential for disruption. The correct approach involves initiating a formal inquiry into the observed discrepancy. This approach is right because it adheres to the principles of due process and fairness inherent in any academic or professional examination. By formally investigating the issue, the university ensures that any potential irregularities are addressed systematically and impartially, upholding the integrity of the entrance exam. This aligns with the likely regulatory framework of Furat University, which would mandate clear procedures for handling examination anomalies to maintain credibility and ensure equitable assessment for all candidates. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the observation. This is ethically and regulatorily unsound as it tacitly condones potential unfairness and undermines the examination's validity. It fails to uphold the university's responsibility to ensure a fair and transparent assessment process. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately disqualify the candidate based on the observation without a proper investigation. This is procedurally flawed and potentially unjust, as it presumes guilt without due process. The regulatory framework of Furat University would likely require a thorough investigation before any punitive action is taken, ensuring that candidates are afforded a fair hearing. A third incorrect approach would be to discuss the observation with other candidates. This breaches confidentiality and could create undue anxiety or influence the perceptions of other applicants, thereby compromising the integrity of the examination environment. It also bypasses the established channels for addressing such issues within the university's regulatory framework. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a structured approach. First, identify the observed anomaly or potential issue. Second, consult the relevant university regulations and examination guidelines to understand the prescribed procedures for handling such matters. Third, initiate the appropriate formal process, which typically involves reporting the observation to the designated authority or committee responsible for examination oversight. Fourth, cooperate fully with any subsequent investigation. And finally, ensure that all actions taken are consistent with the principles of fairness, integrity, and due process, as mandated by the Furat University's regulatory framework. Question 19. Operational review demonstrates that the Furat University Entrance Exam Admissions Committee is facing significant pressure from senior university administration to meet a specific enrollment quota for the upcoming academic year. Some committee members are suggesting that to achieve this target, they should consider applicants who narrowly miss the passing score but have strong extracurricular profiles or recommendations from influential figures, while others propose a more lenient interpretation of the minimum score requirement for certain applicant demographics. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines for the Furat University entrance exam? Option A. Strictly adhere to the established passing score and admission criteria as defined by the Furat University entrance exam regulations, admitting only those candidates who meet all requirements, and communicate the enrollment shortfall to the administration with a request for revised targets or resources. Option B. Allow senior university administration to directly influence the final admission decisions for a predetermined number of applicants who fall below the standard criteria, prioritizing those who can demonstrate strong connections or potential future contributions to the university. Option C. Create a separate, less rigorous admission track for applicants who do not meet the standard passing score, but are deemed to have other valuable attributes, ensuring that the overall enrollment quota is met. Option D. Implement a flexible scoring system where the minimum passing score is adjusted based on the perceived potential of applicants, prioritizing those with strong extracurricular achievements or influential recommendations to meet enrollment targets. The correct answer is A. Strictly adhere to the established passing score and admission criteria as defined by the Furat University entrance exam regulations, admitting only those candidates who meet all requirements, and communicate the enrollment shortfall to the administration with a request for revised targets or resources. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's stated commitment to academic integrity and the practical pressures of meeting enrollment targets. The admissions committee must navigate these competing interests while adhering strictly to the Furat University entrance exam's regulatory framework. A deep understanding of the exam's guidelines regarding fair assessment and the prohibition of undue influence is paramount. The correct approach involves a rigorous and impartial evaluation of all applicants based solely on the established examination criteria and the university's stated admission policies. This upholds the principle of meritocracy, ensuring that admission is granted to the most qualified candidates, thereby preserving the academic standards and reputation of Furat University. This aligns with the spirit and letter of the Furat University entrance exam regulations, which emphasize fairness and objectivity in the selection process. An incorrect approach that prioritizes meeting enrollment targets by lowering admission standards or creating preferential pathways for certain applicants directly violates the Furat University entrance exam's commitment to equitable assessment. This undermines the integrity of the examination process and can lead to the admission of underqualified students, potentially impacting the overall academic quality of the university. Furthermore, any deviation from the established evaluation criteria without explicit regulatory amendment constitutes a breach of procedural fairness and can be seen as a form of academic misconduct. Another incorrect approach that involves exerting pressure on the admissions committee to overlook specific application deficiencies for candidates with perceived external advantages, such as connections or financial contributions, is ethically unsound and a clear violation of the Furat University entrance exams principles. This introduces bias and favoritism, compromising the impartiality that is fundamental to a fair admissions process. Such actions erode trust in the university's selection procedures and can lead to legal and reputational damage. The professional decision-making process in such situations requires a steadfast commitment to the regulatory framework. Professionals must first identify the core principles and rules governing the Furat University entrance exam. They should then critically assess the proposed actions against these regulations, considering the potential consequences for academic integrity, fairness, and the university's reputation. When faced with pressure to deviate from established procedures, professionals must advocate for adherence to the regulations, seeking clarification or guidance from appropriate university authorities if necessary, and documenting all decisions and justification. Question 20. Operational review demonstrates that an applicant for the Furat University entrance exam has submitted a high school transcript that, upon closer inspection, contains a minor discrepancy in the grading scale notation compared to the standard format expected by the university. The applicant is otherwise highly qualified. What is the most appropriate course of action for the applicant to take? Option A. Submit a clear and concise explanation of the discrepancy to the Furat University Admissions Committee, requesting clarification on how to proceed. Option B. Submit the transcript as is, assuming the admissions committee will overlook the minor notation difference. Option C. Withdraw the application immediately without further communication. Option D. Attempt to manually correct the notation on the submitted transcript to match the university's expected format. The correct answer is A. Submit a clear and concise explanation of the discrepancy to the Furat University Admissions Committee, requesting clarification on how to proceed. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the applicant to navigate potential conflicts between academic integrity and the university's admission policies, specifically concerning the authenticity of submitted documents. The applicant must demonstrate an understanding of the Furat University's regulatory framework regarding admissions and the ethical implications of misrepresentation. The correct approach involves a direct and transparent communication with the admissions committee, clearly stating the discrepancy and seeking guidance. This aligns with the Furat University's commitment to academic honesty and fair admission processes. By proactively disclosing the issue, the applicant upholds ethical standards and demonstrates integrity, which are crucial qualities for university students. This approach respects the university's authority to set and enforce admission criteria and allows them to make an informed decision based on accurate information. An incorrect approach of submitting the documents without disclosure would be a direct violation of the Furat University's academic integrity policy. This constitutes misrepresentation and could lead to the immediate rejection of the application or even disciplinary action if discovered later. Another incorrect approach of attempting to alter the documents to match the required format without explicit permission from the issuing authority or the university would also be considered fraudulent. This undermines the principle of authenticity and trust that is fundamental to the admissions process. A third incorrect approach of withdrawing the application without explanation, while avoiding direct misrepresentation, fails to address the underlying issue and misses an opportunity to demonstrate honesty and problem-solving skills, which are valued by academic institutions. Professionals facing similar situations should adopt a framework of transparency, integrity, and adherence to institutional policies. This involves 1. Identifying the core issue and potential ethical implications. 2. Consulting relevant institutional policies and guidelines. 3. Communicating openly and honestly with the appropriate authority. 4. Seeking clarification or guidance rather than making assumptions or attempting to circumvent rules. 5. Documenting all communications and actions taken.